Jealousy, one emotion that can turn love into obsession and obsession into murder. In Costa Rica, a man's life was destroyed, not by a stranger, but by the woman he once trusted. This is the story of Gerardo Cruz, a young father who became a national hero, and Samodi Fonsek, the woman whose twisted revenge would end his life in the most shocking way imaginable. Gerardo Cruz was born in December 1992 in San Jose, Costa Rica. He grew up in a modest home, raised by his mother, Ana Patricia, and his stepfather, Hermes Rodriguez. Gerardo never knew his biological father. He left before Gerardo was even born, but Hermes filled that role with care and discipline. As a child, Gerardo was quiet but kind-hearted. He loved motorcycles, soccer, and spent hours tinkering with engines. Friends remembered him as the guy who always helped others without expecting anything in return. By his early 20s, Gerardo was living a peaceful life. He worked at a local bakery in San Sebastián, a suburb of San Jose. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to take care of the small family he adored, his wife, Carol, and their little daughter, Genesis. At just 23, Gerardo was already a family man. He had responsibilities, dreams, and another baby on the way. Life seemed simple, stable, good. But that illusion of peace was about to be shattered by a woman twice his age, whose beauty hid something far darker. It was the summer of 2015. At the bakery where Gerardo worked, a new customer began to appear. A striking woman, tall, elegant, always dressed to impress. Her name was Samodi Fonsek. At 40 years old, Samodi was confident and alluring. She loved attention, and she knew exactly how to get it. At first, she was just a regular customer, buying bread, pastries, sometimes chatting with the staff. But soon, her visits became more frequent. She lingered longer, smiled more, and always made sure to speak to Gerardo directly. To his coworkers, it was obvious. This woman was flirting. To Gerardo, it was flattering. Despite being married and expecting another child, Gerardo was young, impressionable, and easily drawn in by Samodi's charm. Their conversations grew personal, private, and before long, those friendly exchanges turned into something forbidden. By late summer, they were having an affair, one that Gerardo tried desperately to keep secret. He was living two lives: devoted husband and father at home, reckless lover behind closed doors. But secrets like that don't stay hidden forever. To understand what happened next, you have to know who Samodi Fonsek really was. Born in February 1975, Samodi grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Costa Rica, raised by her mother, Sonia Fonsek. Even as a child, she was known for her temper and her ability to manipulate people to get what she wanted. In her teens, she was beautiful, confident, and dangerously persuasive. Men were drawn to her, and she knew how to use that to her advantage. Locals remember her as someone who loved luxury and status, but often at someone else's expense. After high school, Samodi got a job portraying a life-size Barbie mascot at a major bookstore chain called Universal. Her looks earned her the nickname La Barbie, a name she would proudly carry for the rest of her life. But behind the perfect smile was a woman who couldn't handle rejection. When things didn't go her way, her jealousy turned violent. In her 20s, Samodi began dating a well-known television journalist, Osvaldo Fernando Valeri, 16 years her senior. They had 2 children together, Christopher and Christina, but their relationship was volatile. Friends recalled constant fights, fueled by Samodi's jealousy and temper. When Osvaldo left her after years of chaos, she couldn't accept it. After his death in 2012, she broke into his house, changed the locks, and claimed his belongings, forcing the family to take her to court. There were other men too. A pattern began to emerge. Men who dated her ended up either vanishing, dead, or living in fear of her anger. One lover went missing shortly after ending things with her. His body was never found. Another was murdered in what appeared to be a robbery gone wrong. Police never proved her involvement, but locals whispered the same name, Samodi. Still, she was never charged, and by 2015, she had moved on to new targets, this time much younger ones. Gerardo's co-workers quickly noticed changes in him. He became distracted, nervous, and often checked his phone at work. Samodi, meanwhile, flaunted her control. She began visiting the bakery daily, sometimes with her teenage daughter, Christina, acting as if she owned the place. For Gerardo, the affair was thrilling at first, but soon it became suffocating. Samodi wanted more time, more attention, more control. She showered him with gifts, sent constant messages, and grew possessive. When rumors of the affair reached Gerardo's mother, she confronted him directly. She warned him that the woman he was seeing was dangerous, but Gerardo brushed it off, insisting it was just a fling. He thought he could end it easily. He was wrong. In October 2015, everything came crashing down. Samodi discovered that Gerardo's wife, Carol, was pregnant again, and she snapped. She began calling and texting Carol, hurling insults and threats. In one message, she warned that if Gerardo didn't leave his wife, she would kill him. Terrified and ashamed, Gerardo confessed everything to Carol. He begged for forgiveness, promising to cut ties with Samodi forever. Carol forgave him. She wanted to believe the nightmare was over. But for Samodi, it was just beginning. To her, the breakup wasn't an ending, it was a betrayal, and betrayal, in her mind, deserved punishment. Just days after the breakup, something unexpected happened that made Gerardo a national figure. While walking downtown, he saw an older man secretly filming under a young woman's skirt. Disgusted, Gerardo confronted him, recording the incident on his phone and exposing the man on social media. The video went viral overnight. The creep turned out to be a former government official named Luis Solano Delgado. Gerardo became a national hero, hailed as a symbol of courage and morality. He appeared on radio shows and TV interviews, calling for respect toward women and justice against predators. But fame brought new problems. The official's lawyers filed a lawsuit accusing Gerardo of defamation and privacy violation. Still, he wasn't afraid. He believed the truth was on his side. What he didn't know was that while he was focused on defending his actions in public, Samodi was plotting his death in private. Unable to accept rejection, Samodi began following Gerardo's every move. She learned his work schedule, his routines, even where his friends lived. Her jealousy transformed into obsession. She started contacting people around him, spreading rumors, twisting stories, making sure everyone knew she wasn't finished with him. Then she made a plan. If she couldn't have him, no one would. On the morning of October 7th, Gerardo woke up early, kissed his daughter goodbye, and left for work like any other day. He had an interview scheduled that evening with a journalist to talk about his viral video. Or so he thought. That afternoon, he received a message. It was from Samodi. She told him the interviewer had changed the location, asked him to meet at a park instead. She sounded calm, friendly, almost supportive. Gerardo hesitated, but eventually agreed. He didn't suspect a thing. After all, this was someone he'd once trusted. That night, after finishing his shift at the bakery, Gerardo texted his friend that he couldn't make their usual meetup. He had something important to do. He never said what. At around 8 p.m., he headed toward the park. Streetlights flickered. The air was still. Gerardo Cruz walked through the dimly lit park, unaware that every step was being watched. Hidden in the shadows, two men waited. Men who weren't there for an interview, but for blood. Moments later, Gerardo's phone buzzed. A message from Samodi read, "I'm already here. Come toward the fountain." He followed the directions, scanning the dark corners, expecting to see cameras or journalists. But instead, two figures appeared behind him. Before he could react, they attacked. One man struck him. The other pulled a knife. In seconds, Gerardo was stabbed repeatedly in the chest and abdomen. His bag and jacket were ripped from him as he collapsed onto the ground, bleeding and gasping for air. Through sheer willpower, he reached for his phone, his last lifeline. He called his friend, whispering, "They stabbed me. Call the police." Then the line went silent. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Gerardo was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, his body pierced by multiple stab wounds. News spread fast. The man who had once been hailed as a hero was now fighting for his life. Costa Rica watched in horror as daily updates about his condition filled TV screens and newspapers. For 42 days, doctors fought to save him. He underwent surgery after surgery, but the damage was too severe. On November 19th, 2015, Gerardo Cruz died from his injuries. He was just 22 years old. His death broke the hearts of millions. Vigils were held across the country. Candles flickered in the streets, and people demanded justice. The media mourned a young man who stood for truth and courage, never realizing that his killer wasn't a political enemy, but someone much closer. At first, investigators believed it was a robbery gone wrong. Gerardo's bag and jacket were missing, and the attack happened in a public park. It looked like a random act of violence, but detectives noticed something strange. The attackers didn't take his phone or wallet, only his bag and jacket. It felt deliberate, staged. Then came another theory. Many suspected the former official Gerardo had exposed online. Luis Solano Delgado. Some believe Delgado had hired hitmen to silence the young man who ruined his career. Protests erupted, demanding Delgado's arrest, but investigators couldn't find any evidence connecting him to the attack. For months, the case went cold. No arrests, no solid leads, just grief, anger, and questions. Everything changed in May 2016. When police uncovered new CCTV footage from a nearby street camera. It showed two men sprinting away from the park right after the attack. The footage was grainy, but their faces were visible enough for detectives to circulate the images on national television. Look closely, police urged the public. These could be Gerardo's killers. Days later, one of the men surrendered himself to authorities. He was young, terrified, and willing to talk in exchange for a lighter sentence. His confession cracked the case wide open. Under questioning, the man revealed everything. The attack, he said, was no robbery. It was a murder for hire. And the person who ordered it? Samodi Fonsek. She had orchestrated the entire thing. The messages, the location, even the stolen bag and jacket, all part of her plan to make the killing look like a random assault. Investigators dug deeper, tracing phone records and text messages. What they found left them speechless. Hundreds of messages between Samodi, her daughter Christina, and several accomplices outlined the murder plot step by step. Samodi had planned everything meticulously. She used her daughter as her right hand. Together, they recruited a cab driver named Ronald Archie, and an intermediary, Cesar Chavez, to find hitmen willing to carry out the killing. Another accomplice, Omar Acosta, was assigned to follow Gerardo and update the group on his movements. The night of October 7th, every participant played their role like actors in a deadly play. Samodi stayed home, sending final instructions from her phone. Cristina coordinated the others. And when Gerardo's blood stained the ground, the killers took his jacket and bag. To prove the job was done, armed with undeniable evidence, police moved in. Samodi and her daughter were arrested first. Then the rest, Ronald, Cesar, and Omar, followed within days. During interrogation, their stories aligned perfectly with the digital trail investigators had already mapped out. The murder had been driven by one thing: jealousy. Samodi couldn't stand the thought of Gerardo returning to his wife. In her mind, if she couldn't have him, no one could. When officers searched her phone, they found chilling messages detailing the plan: where to meet, how to make it look like a robbery, and how to deliver proof afterward. She never deleted them. She thought she was untouchable. The case shocked Costa Rica. A respected young man had been lured and murdered, not by criminals, but by a woman he once loved. The investigation lasted over a year. Finally, in December 2017, the trial began. Courtrooms were packed with journalists, cameras, and a grieving family who wanted answers. Every piece of evidence pointed back to Samodi: text messages, call logs, and testimony from her own accomplices. But as the trial unfolded, even more of her dark past surfaced. It turned out this wasn't her first brush with the law. Years earlier, she'd been charged with forging documents to receive government benefits, earning her a suspended sentence. She'd also faked paternity documents to claim child support from a former lover, Miguel Angel Perez, for years. When the fraud was discovered, she was sentenced to 3 years, but never served time due to having a young child. The court saw a pattern: a woman who lied, manipulated, and used others for her own gain. Gerardo's wife, Carol, took the stand. Through tears, she recounted how Samodi had threatened to kill her husband if he didn't end his marriage. She begged the court to give her husband justice. Then came the accomplices. Ronald and Cesar confessed their roles, describing how Samodi had promised payment and demanded proof that the job was done. Cristina's involvement became undeniable. She had sent messages coordinating times, confirming her mother's instructions, and even panicking after seeing surveillance footage of the attackers on TV. In one emotional moment, prosecutors read a transcript of a phone call between mother and daughter after the footage aired. Cristina was crying, terrified, ready to confess. But Samodi calmed her down, saying, "They'll never find us." Those words sealed her fate. On January 23, 2018, the courtroom fell silent as the judge read the verdict. Samodi Fonsek was found guilty of orchestrating the murder of Gerardo Cruz. Her daughter, Cristina, and accomplices Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez were also convicted. The sentences were harsh. Samodi Fonsek, 30 years in prison. Cristina Fonsek, 25 years. Ronald Archie, 25 years. Cesar Chavez, 25 years. Omar Acosta, who had only followed the victim, was acquitted. One of the teenage attackers was sent to juvenile detention. The other was never found. When the verdict was announced, Gerardo's family wept. They finally had justice, though no punishment could bring him back. The court also ordered compensation, over $140,000 to Gerardo's family for moral damages. But the story didn't end there. In 2019, Samodi and her daughter appealed their sentences, claiming the punishment was excessive. The appeals court reviewed the case and reduced each sentence by 5 years. Still, the evidence was overwhelming. The conviction stood. Samodi would spend 25 years behind bars, and her daughter the same. Inside prison, Samodi remained as manipulative as ever. In 2020, she made headlines again, this time for marrying another inmate, a woman named Lindsay Diaz-Lopez. Lindsay was released on parole shortly after, leaving Samodi to serve out her decades-long sentence alone. Even behind bars, La Barbie continued to attract attention, still craving the control and admiration that once defined her life. The murder of Gerardo Cruz wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a story of ego, obsession, and vengeance. A young man who tried to do the right thing was taken down by the darkest part of human nature. His story serves as a reminder that jealousy, when left unchecked, can destroy everything it touches. It blinds, it burns, and it kills. Gerardo's courage had once inspired a nation, and even in death, his legacy lives on, reminding Costa Rica of the price of integrity and the danger of trusting the wrong person. This was the case of Samodi Fonsek, the woman who turned love into murder, and the story of Gerardo Cruz, whose bravery made him a hero, and whose kindness made him a target. If this case moved you, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more cases like this.